Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to another edition of the RailCats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Savetic. We finally got news. As I know, I haven't really been keeping up with the weekly podcast, with no kind of actual comments, or not comments, or actual. I was hoping to have a couple things in place, and they didn't end up panning out for some odd reason, or whatever the case may be. Things just kind of go a little bit cold when you're trying to set things up, and I just don't know if it's just me personally or what I'm doing, but we'll work through that portion of it. And I'm not like the dogs. I don't really have the RailCats aren't like the dogs, so we don't really have much to talk about on that whole scandal of whatever is going on that side, which is very interesting to hear, to kind of see what both sides of it, especially with the Rowdy RailCats fan page on Facebook, and some of the dogs fans in there ripping the dogs apart, and then the dogs COO basically trying to defend what's going on. So we don't really know what the whole full story is. If you really want to dive deep into the full story, Indie Ball Report with Nick and Ryan. Well, it's Nick's show. Ryan jumps on. Ryan is Indie Ball Nation, that kind of stuff. So they're very good at keeping close contact with that. They even said that they didn't think that was going to be as a big story as it's turning it out to be. So if you're interested in more of that, definitely listen to them. I know they're on Spotify. I prefer Spotify over Podbean. I can't stand Podbean. I can't listen. So that's why I have a hard time listening to This Week in Association, because I got halfway through listening to one episode and now I can't go. I'll click on the episode to listen to that I was already listening halfway through it, and it's going to the Systematically Wild, their Minnesota Wilds, Iowa Wild, the AHL team that they do the reporting and stuff on that. So I can't listen to the rest of This Week in Association, which is I just want, that's all I wanted to listen to. I have a few podcasts I listen to, and that's one of them, and it's just I just want to listen to it just to hear what's kind of going on, what other players, player interviews and stuff like that are going on with inside the American Association, so I can kind of keep up to date with some of the stuff. But then I also was battling a little bit of a head cold with the season change coming up and around. I was just battling a really bad cold, and I know you're gonna and some people may say, well, Ryan went through the whole, or Nick went through the whole flu going on, and he still did. I was like, yeah, well, they have more important things to actual news to cover, and I didn't really have anything, so I just decided to take a backseat on last week, or maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. And also with my work schedule is super crazy. I know the past 2 weekends were shop event weekends, so we were making stupid amount of money. We were just stupid busy, and so it was just one of those, especially working long hours. I have game plans I gotta get done and stuff like that. So I'm kind of changing the whole store up and stuff. It's most of the time, it's when I missed the Jacob Bockelie and the Will Decker, I looked and it wasn't updated. So I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, no big deal. And then over the course of the weekend, it's, oh, hey, the RailCats song. I'm like, what? Hold on, let me see this real quick. So I was luckily able to make an article and all that kind of stuff. And then even today with the 11th, which this will probably come out 12th, 13th. I'm not sure when this is going to come out. With the signing of Chris Erwin, I saw in Paulie's post. Why Chris on my head? Paulie's post about how the RailCats posted about Jacob Bockelie and Will Decker being signed, and he said Erwin. I was like, let me double check before I take a shower. That and then I was like, oh, I saw that, so I was like, all right, well, I guess I gotta kind of change what I'm doing on that front of it. So that that kind of brings it all together on where we're at now. So where we're at now is we'll talk about Will Decker signing with the RailCats. That was on Friday, which was the 8th, I believe. Really didn't play much last year. He only played in 26 games. He had 66 at bats. I think he played the field like one time, or not, eight, 9 times. They're all in the outfield. I know he was battling, I believe it was like a hamstring injury. So I know a lot of times he was in the lineup, out of the lineup. But most of the time that you went to the steel yard, you mostly saw him at first base as a first base coach. That's kind of what you got from him. But that I really like Will Decker. I think he brings a positive attitude. He's an older player, and I know that they've kind of like relaxed some of the rules on like veteran players, and where like the LS4s. I still have to understand all of that, but I know like that they've kind of released some of that. I think you still have to have a minimum of a certain amount of rookies, a maximum of a certain amount of veterans, but I think the LS3s, LS4s there and stuff like that are kind of loosened up, so you're able to keep more of the players that were a little bit older, and I think that might have hindered some of the RailCats at the point of a lot of the players were really young that they were bringing in the past couple years. Now you're able to kind of keep a little bit of the older guys. I know when you look here, you don't really see, you only have really technically one veteran that's in here, and that's Carlos Martinez. Jesus Mariaga is an LS3, Del Valle is an LS4. So like you don't really have a lot, of the veteran aspects in the status. But with being an older player, I know he's classified as a rookie technically, but age-wise, he's an older player in that front. So I think he is someone that is going to be a really good depth player and might be able to battle for an outfield position if he is healthy. I don't think he's gonna fit that first base role very much, or not first base, the DH role at all. I think he's going to be more of a depth player that's going to be coming in your pinch hitting situations. I think that's a good use of him. He does have the speed. He does play very good outfield, so he could be a good a rotational player. If you're going to relieve Castillo, or if you're going to relieve Del Valle, I know, but like you're still, like I said, there's so many. There's still that. I mean, those are classified the only outfielders that we have. So, there's your fourth outfielder, the rotational outfielder. You may bring on one more, maybe. I know you might have a couple that are in the infield that can play the outfield sort of deal. Actually, I'm looking at last year's. Oops. Looking at last year's roster, I meant to look at this year's roster, so I kind of throw most of that out the window. But Will Decker's still an LS, it's still a rookie classified. But the outfielder that bolsters it up from Carlos Machado, Carlos Rincon, and Will Decker, and Jesus Mariaga, Del Valle, and Castillo. So like the outfield is going to be a battle. But you also see a lot more LS4s going on over here. Like I said, that's just what the classification is. So I'm liking what I'm seeing as far as bolstering what we're going to potentially get out of the outfield. I think that was maybe a tad bit of not a necessarily a weakness, but a lack of rotation, to say. If someone's struggling, you couldn't replace him with someone else and have a rotational kind of, maybe Mariaga doesn't play that much of the outfield and is able to DH some more, or vice versa, however you want to play things around, rotate some people around. If a player is struggling inside of a game, you're able to take that player out and put someone else. Now I know I have to count how many actually are still in the roster necessarily, but what I guess what I'm getting at is this is going to give Lamar Rogers options, and I think that's something that he bolted himself to last year, that he didn't have that opportunity to. He felt like he had a good enough roster to where it necessarily didn't need to change too much, and things just didn't start the way he wanted to, and there was no way for him to kind of have that competitive edge. And I think now you're gonna find a better competitive edge. I think last year you thought we were gonna have more of a competitive behind the plate, and we necessarily really didn't. Um, with I can't think of his name. He got injured. Uh, but I think, I think you had a good competition at first base with a handful, between Sherman Graves, who didn't make it past basically opening day, uh, Sam Abbott with Emmanuel Tapia. Like, you had that good kind of. You kind of went from one to another when another one was struggling. You were able to pick them up and that kind of stuff. Then going on to Jackson and Valera. So like you're able. I think that's going to be a better rotation in the infielders. But I'm kind of getting away from talking about Will Decker. Just looking at his stats from last year, just running over him real quick. 26 games played, 66 at bats, 11 runs, 19 hits, 6 doubles, 1 triple, 6 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, got caught once, walked 10 times, struck out 13, had a batting average of 288, 388, and 409 to finish out the rest of his slash line there, and he had an OPS of 797, which not necessarily, I mean, his on base percentage, he's gonna get on base. That's someone that you're gonna need. Maybe he could be your designated leadoff hitter. Maybe that's what you're kind of going for, to fill the gap of Gio Diaz. He could be that guy getting on base. Basically 38% of the time is good. In the sense of that, I mean, that's what really brought up his OPS is his batting. I mean, his slugging's not halfway terrible, but he's not going to give you the power. He's going to give you doubles. He's going to give you triples. He's just not going to give you that power. He's your very good hitter. Yeah, I think he's a very good hitter. He's especially batting at 288 with the limited time that he had. So like that's the big thing I'm looking at is like you have a 288 batting average and the limited time that you were playing, and you were playing in and out, not consistently in the lineup, and you're able to get on base, you're able to hit the ball. That's someone that's going to be able to compete for a spot, and that brings competition to the team, which you're going to need. I really think that's what you're going to need, and that's what's going to drive the force of getting these players. And really, listening to all these other podcasts talking about how the Mexican League has opened up their international play, or internet, bringing in international players. I think it was from a few to like 20 now, and especially with the minor leagues paying livable wages now, a lot of the American players aren't necessarily going to want to go to indie ball. So that's maybe a main reason why we're seeing a lot more international players being brought in, because they may not be able to maybe make it in the minors, but at least them playing in America is going to be more livable when they go back to their own countries and play, or whatever the case may be. So like they're able to play year round and they want to play year round, as versus someone in the United States where you don't really have that luxury. A lot of times it's, well, why would I take a step back when I may not have the opportunity? Why go through the grind necessarily when I know that in the long run of things I'm not going to be able to? So like I think that's why we're seeing a lot more international players being brought in, and then I say that and Jacob Bockelie gets signed and Chris Erwin gets signed and so on and so forth. But I'm just saying I think a lot of people were wondering what the big influx of the international player was, and I was kind of as well, and I'm not that in tune or in that depth of understanding everything just quite yet. I'm getting there, just not quite yet. But I think that's a huge difference between the two of what we're seeing. Why maybe years ago you were seeing a lot more American-based players, and now you're seeing more of the international-based players. That's a big reason behind it, is probably the influx of what Mexico is going to offer versus what independent baseball is going to offer in general. And then the whole livable wages with the minor leagues and stuff like that. But also on the flip side, I can imagine them having more cuts in the minor leagues, so that would kind of open up. I know spring training wasn't, but I know they're doing some kind of like breakthrough roster. I didn't understand that, but Brian Torres was on it. Good for him. But anyways, continuing with Will Decker, I just think that he's just a solid player that's going to give the team some kind of depth, and I think that's what you're going to need. You get some kind of depth. Now, going on over to Jacob Bockelie. who was a trade for Matt Leon last year. Was it July 31st? Uh, that was more of, I think, a change of scenery kind of play there with Jacob Bockelie. And I was, this is probably, out of everyone that we've have brought back, this was probably the biggest surprise to me, was Jacob Bockelie, just because I think he was expecting more sort of a playing time and more of a playing chance. I don't think he ever really got that. But also, maybe, when you're looking at the batting average aspect of it, like last year with the RailCats, he only batted a 177, on base of 268, slugging of 323, OPS of 590. Like, that wasn't very good. That's not a very good number to be at. Versus with Winnipeg, he was batting a 261, on base percentage of 345, slugging of 458, and OPS of 803, which is a lot better. And then he comes over and, like, he obviously he only played 18 games with the RailCats. You weren't really going to get much opportunity to try to get in with the way Valera's playing, and really the way that Contreras was playing. So it's just interesting to see them bring him back. And I'm not saying that's not necessarily a bad thing. You're bringing more depth. You're bringing more. First, it just seems like they've really started to kind of overload that first base role, the third base area, to have more rotation and more competition. So I really think when you're looking at a lot of these signings that are going to be now brought in, is going to be more for competition's sake, as far as maybe a cornerstone sake. The first initial rush, I would say, is more of a cornerstone piece than an actual, like, competition piece. And now I think you're starting to see the competition piece, besides Chris Erwin. I'll get to him in a second, but I'm gonna spend more time with Jacob Bockelie. I mean, I think we were all kind of stunned last year a little bit with the move of Bockelie, and I think that was something that we weren't really expecting. And I know a lot of people. I think you kind of get one of those, like, did we really need to trade for him? Did we really need, and I don't. I never want to say that we'll bring a person on. I say that's just terrible, and I don't think I'm not saying that bringing Bockelie back is a terrible decision. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think Bockelie brings probably a positive attitude. I'm just not inside the locker room. I just don't know the players well enough to know what they kind of bring to the field. And I know when he was with Gary, when you saw him at first base coach, like the way he interacted with the fans, like I think he's a positive attribute. I think maybe just coming over with the RailCats and in the situation that he was brought into wasn't the best for him, and he just couldn't get the right footing because he was kind of brought in late into the year, and first base was kind of already established. So it's just kind of hard to get your reps up when it's already established, and you're coming to a new city, a new lifestyle sort of deal. You're just, I think that just, it's a bigger change than one would think. And I think that's just, he just never really found his true footing. So I'm glad that he's back to hopefully find that footing and be successful. Like I said, I want everyone on this team to be successful. Just, we know that there are just some people that are in a solid place and more of a competition place. And I would classify Bockelie as in more of that competition place, as well as Will Decker. I just think Will Decker has more opportunity to solidify his role with the team, just because of the lack. I mean, there's more outfielders, but I just think the lack of depth and speed with the team. He could be that depth speed guy. Bockelie may just be a bat. You just may need a bat, and I think that was a big downfall from last year, is you just didn't have the depth. I think that I think that's where the fault in the aspect of overloading pitchers and the aspect of making sure that you have your starter's only going 4 or 5 innings, really digs deep into the bullpen. So you need a bigger bullpen. And I think at this point, you need a smaller bullpen to be able to open. You have to find the happy medium. I think that's where we're kind of finding now. I think we'll see a full 30-man roster 2 weeks before, and it's going to shrink down to the size that it needs to be. Was it 21? 21, 23. I always forget the number. I should have it like posted noted to my forehead or posted noted on my screen, so that way like I know. I just forget things. All right, sometimes I just don't look at things when I start talking, and then I forget. So that leads us to Chris Erwin, who, if you saw my article, I put the aces back. And you may be wondering, outside of Edward Cuello, Harrison Francis, Adam Heidenfelder, and obviously Harrison Francis, Adam Heidenfelder, like they're not with the team. Those kinds of even John Sheeks last year. I mean, I guess realistically, if you look at it, John Sheeks was probably more of the ace last year, but with Erwin getting hurt, it was kind of Erwin. When you look at his stats, even if we go to last year, and we go into the pitching stats, he was just under Harrison Francis last year at Harrison Francis had a 4.43 and Erwin had a 4.5, and then when you look down at Sheeks, he had a 5.22 ERA. So like his ERA, in 2021 was at the lowest at 3.09, but he was also number one in via starts. Like when you take the starts of the starting pitching, not overall. When you look at overall, he's fourth. But just taking the starting pitching, he was second last year, but he was first in 2021. 2022 was 4.01, and in 2023 he was second at 4.5. So like I just think when you base it off the ERA, I know ERA is not everything, but in pitching it is pretty much the stat that most people are going to look at. I know you can look at other sabermetrics and that kind of stuff, but when you just kind of break it down for what it is, yeah, he's not going to. I think that his last year was kind of like the eye opening to when you kind of looked at his stats. And I remember even like reviewing the team, and I go, Harrison Francis, in 2023 or 2022, when you were looking at the strikeout leaders of pitching, let me look it up real quick here. You had Harrison Francis at 95, Eisenbarger at 88, Erwin at 86, Heidenfelder at 84, Sheeks at 74. You were looking at all these pitchers, and obviously Erwin didn't reach the 100 inning mark. Heidenfelder did. Francis was just 5 pitches off, but like he was one that was, I think, and really Erwin, in 2022, he relieved in 5 appearances. He had played 20 games, but he relieved in 5 of them when everyone else didn't. Like he can do both the starting and the relief role to a certain extent if really you need him to be. So I think he's that versatile tool that I think is maybe a little bit underrated to a certain extent. I just think when you really look at it, I know you say, well, he was an opening day starter in the past 3 years. Trevor Love-King was the opening 2 in 21 and 22. And really, if he was healthy and came back and was pitching last year and came back this year, he would probably be the ace hands down. I think he was just an overall better pitcher. His stats showed it. He was really efficient, and I think if he was able to pitch last year, I really think he would have had an opportunity to make it to the next level. It's just injury prone, that kind of stuff. And when you just kind of look at the consistency throughout, when you look at the consistency of Chris Erwin, yeah, his ERA kind of goes up, but like it's one of those, he's not going to strike a bunch of people out. He's not going to walk a bunch of people either. So he's going to be that fine line of balls are going to be put in play, right? And even if balls are going to be put in play, you're going to need a defense behind him. And I'm not saying that the defense behind him the defense behind him the last 2 years hasn't been what he saw in year one. Especially at shortstop with Lingual, like he had really good numbers that first year in 2021, and then his number just kind of skyrocketed in the errors. Like that's what now I granted I get that errors don't necessarily hurt in the aspects of like if someone scores off, like that's not going to hurt your ERA, but it still is the momentum getter if you have a guy on third and second and a ball's hit to short and there's an error that's that gets caused onto that, like that's runs against, or you're trying to get out of an inning, you have a guy on first and second, you have two outs, and there's an error that happens, now bases are loaded, you accidentally walk a guy, like that's all gonna count, right? That's all gonna be a form of you're going to your ERA. Like you just need those opportunities, and when you don't get those opportunities to, like, when the team isn't there behind you, that's when it's going to kind of hurt your ERA. So like even at that, even though he doesn't strike out a whole bunch, like he only struck out 56 last year, but he only gave up 53 hits in 54 innings. Like, okay, you give up one hit an inning, right? That's pretty good average. Only giving up one hit an inning, only giving up 20 walks. That's under half an inning, basically giving over a half an inning. However you get what I'm going with this one. Versus like mostly everyone else that's a starting. I mean, he gave up 20 walks, and DJ Wilkinson, who was hands down the best pitcher on the team last year, gave up 24 walks. Now, like I say, now walks aren't always going to hurt you, but like when you look at the least amount of walks given up, Erwin, out of everyone that has, Vitriago had 6 games played, DaCosta only had 3 games, Santos played 5, Rosario played 7, Jones had 9, Miller had 15, Leon had 22. Erwin had 13 games, but he pitched in 54 innings and only gave up 20 walks. Like, out of the main core pitching, he gave up the least amount. That's that's huge. And when you even look at the least amount of runs given up, with 54 innings pitched, he gave up 31. Wilkinson only gave up 18, but like he's the only one close. Eisenbarger gave up 52. Nunez gave up 36. But like I'm saying, in the core portion of it, he's at the top echelons of what numbers you're going to be kind of looking at. Even in innings pitched, he had the injury. Like that's what kind of took him out of going 18, 20, almost 100 innings pitched. Now, I understand that if he pitched 100 innings, his numbers might have gone up a little bit more, but I don't necessarily think his ERA would have gone up. I think his ERA would have probably gone down. I really think he was going to get better throughout the year, and I think that arm injury hurt him, and that's why the numbers aren't quite there. But when you just kind of play on the years past of pitching, the least amount of hits given up, I guess he gave up 8. Last year may have been a down year. I mean, but he's still pretty much on par. He pitched in 83 innings last year and gave up 83 hits. Like, and gave up only 46 or 43 runs, and 37 of them were earned. Like that's right then and there that just shows like the defense. I mean, it's not a huge number, but it's a big number. He gave up 40 walks in 83 innings, so that's a walk every 2-ish innings. That's not terrible. Oh wait, my bad. I was looking at the wrong one. No, I'm looking at the right one. And he had 86 strikeouts, that 1 per inning, basically what you're working with. This is just a guy that's going to rely on the defense, and he doesn't have. You're not saying that he has the filthiest stuff in the world, but he's gonna there's gonna be bad on ball, and he's gonna rely on his defense to make a play, and he does that consistently. And I think that's just a huge portion of when you're looking at a player, what he's able to do. And that's just one of those situations where going into this year, okay, he may be battling with Chris Erwin to be that top guy for this year, but in my eyes, when you're looking at the roster for pitching, like he's the guy. He to me he's the guy. Edward Cuello, I think one opening day starter in 2023 just because Trevor Lupking was out. I think that's and Chris or Edward Cuello was really hot at the beginning of last year before he got injured. So like it was just a default to go to him, but like Chris Erwin's just that sneaky good pitcher that has just kind of flown under the radar. And if you're not really looking at the statistics and you're really not paying attention, you're just not gonna know. Like he's just not gonna be that guy that's gonna be like, oh my god, he had 20 strikeouts in this game. And I think even I think last year he had a season high of 12ish. I forget how much that he had. I may have to go back and see. I may do that and talk some more, because why not? Why not just do that? I think that's perfectly normal to just kind of go through and see what he did. I think what. Oh yeah, it was June 16th against Lake Country. He had 11 strikeouts. Like he was on top of his game basically on that portion of it. Uh, I know that was probably the peak of his performance, and you know that, but that's the part that sucks also in that is like this is why we can't look at records, right? Because he pitched 6 innings, had 11 strikeouts, gave up 1 run on 5 hits, 1 walk, and he still got the loss because the team lost 5-0. Like that's why it's so hard to look at records and looking at the quality of what the score is of when when they get the losses. Like there isn't a lot of like when you kind of look at it. Some of the losses are bad. That's from last year. But sometimes you don't even get most of the times you pitch really good, you don't even get a decision. So it's like kind of hard to look at you can't really look at the record at the most point. Like obviously a pitching record is going to attribute to the team record, but the team record also affects the pitching record, that kind of deal. So I just think that he's a sneaky good pitcher that needs a little bit more recognition. And I think if he stays on top of what stays on top of what he's already been doing, he's going to be perfectly fine. He'll come out this year and he'll be perfectly fine if he can stay healthy, if the arm can stay healthy. I think he'll stay at the top of the rotation. That's what I got for the three. Good pickups. I'm interested to see what more kind of pickups they're going to be. That kind of stuff. I'll think of something to fill in weeks or whatever the case may be until season starts. But right now I got nothing. I have nothing. I just with work it's just been really hectic filling into the new role that I'm in, and it not really like my days have been like, okay, I'm gonna start this task at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it feels like an hour or so when I look up it's already 4 hours past. I'm like, well, where's the day gone? So like my mind is just I just don't have that that gap of what I was used to having, that half-hour car ride home and me going home and being able to sit on the couch for 45 minutes and going, okay, this is what I need to get done next. And it's just like, boom, no, I have to go home and things have to get done. Thank God with the time change, it's helped because like today I was able to go home and it was nice outside, so I was like able to walk the dogs. Like I haven't been able to do that even if it's nice out because I get home and it's already dark because of working 10-hour days. Like I'm not saying like, oh my god, I'm working 10-hour days, it's just so long. It's just a lot of the times my schedule also flip-flops a lot. Like I was working this weekend and I closed all weekend and then I had open today, so like I get a lot of those. And then with this week, especially at the end of this week, I will be in Chicago for my future brother-in-law's bachelor party during St. Patty's Day weekend. That's gonna be an interesting one. That'll be fun, but it'll be very interesting. to say the least on that one. So if nothing goes on from Monday to Thursday, I will think of something for next week. If there is a signing of some sort, there'll be an article, but there probably won't be a podcast until the next week after. So that will wrap it up for me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, whenever you're watching this. And go Cats.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and white.